Markets Now is brought to you by the 5-year anniversary of Brevant Seeds. Here's to 5 years of not just winning, but collecting one game-changing W after another. See all of our wins at Brevant.com/wins.
And welcome to Markets Now. I'm Michelle Rook with Jim McCormick of agmarket.net as we provide some analysis here of the USDA quarterly stocks report and the small grains summary. Jim, thanks for being with me. Let's talk a little bit about the quarterly stocks. First of all, corn coming in at 1.532 billion bushels. That is lower than last year, but it was above trade estimates. It's above the ending stocks figure USDA gave us, but we shouldn't have been surprised, should we, with the way basis has been acting?
No, I mean, it's very interesting, Michelle. If you look at the average trade guesses, the average trade guess wasn't look for much of a revision at all. But like I said, if you look at how the tea leaves would look going into this report, into the fall, the basis all, late summer was very, very weak. The spreads were suggesting there was plenty of grain out there. And if you just look at just the logic, the government lowered the feed number back in January, never touched it for the next 9 months. They did raise exports throughout the summer or throughout the marketing year as we kept shipping grain to Mexico to feed that livestock. So to find that we had some extra bushels laying around due to, I believe, lack of feed. And like I said, the cash market was giving those signals. And, the government came clean today and gave us a little bit bearish number.
They also revised 2024 production up, and they did that with acreage. Is that right?
That's where it was. They did leave the yield unchanged, but they did raise the acreage a little bit. So they essentially raised the crop by about 25 million. Not a game changer, but the crop did get a little bit bigger. Now we'll see what happens with this year's crop as we progress through its harvest. A lot of people are thinking this crop will struggle to maintain the early yields that we're seeing, which are quite good due to disease, but only time will tell.
So, Jim, this is a pretty big miss by USDA. How did they incorporate this now as we go into that October WASDE?
Well, if the quote question right now is if we have an October WASDE, because as we record it right now, it looks like we are barreling toward a government shutdown. If the government shutdown's more than 7-8 days, more likely they will cancel the October WASDE. But if we do get lucky enough to get this worked out by the government, then what they'll do is they'll take that increased carry-in, 1.5 billion bushels roughly, put that into the carry-in, which means that we can essentially lower the yield this year and pretty much offset it with the bigger carry-in and keep this balance sheet, I'd say, a little bit burdensome.
Yeah. The one thing that I did note that was probably a positive, at least, was that the amount of corn in on-farm storage was down like 18% from last year. So producers did try to do a better job getting it moved off the farm this year than a year ago, didn't they?
They did. And, I think that was essentially what the market, the rhetoric or the thought process of the trade going into the summer or late summer was this is going to be a monster crop coming in. And it looks like it's still going to be a big crop. Michelle, you could actually lower the national yield by 5 bushels roughly from the current estimate. And your crop would still be something like 1.4, 1.5 billion bushels bigger than a year ago. So, yes, it looks like the farmer definitely did the right thing, getting rid of that old crop, trying to make as much space for the new crop as possible.
Gotcha. What about soybeans? Quarterly stocks there, 323 million bushels, down 19 million bushels from last year, down about 14 million bushels from ending stocks from USDA. So what do you think? Not a game changer there?
Not a game changer. They did make no yield adjustments, made slight acreage adjustments. But yeah, it's not a big game changer. What's going to define where the bean market goes from here on out is going to be the bean yields. So far, I'd say the early bean yields have been very, very impressive, maybe better than a lot of people anticipated. There is a thought that maybe the bean yields will tail off due to the dry August as we get to the latter half of it, but that may not matter. The main picture could be China. The fact of the matter is we missed the September window, we've missed the October window. When essentially Argentina had a fire sale for beans last week, they essentially missed our November shipping window and maybe even partly into December. That could be 5 to 600 million bushels of beans that normally ship in the fall that we're not shipping. And that could have a very big impact on the balance sheet when it's all said and done.
Yeah. So upwards of 40 cargoes that China bought from Argentina. So that should get China all the way through November. Is that what you think? It
should get you through November and possibly into December. And if you look, I think, how the Chinese stocks have been doing, Michelle, they've been bracing for this trade war for the last 4 years. They've built up their bean stocks. So the reality is this: between what they bought from South America and what they have in stocks, if they want to stiff arm the U.S. and not buy beans, they can do that. And they can essentially blackball us through the fall, and then we'll see what happens in the springtime.
For sure. So we should be under $10 beans if that happens, I would assume.
Unfortunately, that could be what is in play right now. If you look at the chart pattern, it looks like we could be forming a bear flag. You take out last week's lows, the bear flag comes into play. The 38% projection of the bear flag takes you to the long-term trend line off of last year's lows and the summer lows. You take that out, your 50% projection of the bear flag matches the August lows of this year, and a full extension of the bear flag unfortunately projects down toward essentially the 957 level, which is a few cents lower than where this November 25 contract bottomed a year ago in late December. So those are kind of the bear extension points. Hopefully we don't go down there, but unfortunately we could with the lack of China purchases.
Yeah. And corn isn't having a real violent reaction today just because you said most of it was kind of priced in or expected.
I think it's exactly what it was. Like I said, even though the average trade guess wasn't for much adjustments, I think the trade was anticipating a bearish report. Like you mentioned, the basis all late summer suggested that we had plenty of grain, and the government just confirmed what the trade was thinking, I believe.
And wheat, both quarterly stocks and production were increased in today's report, but not by a great amount, right?
Exactly. Slight revisions. In general, we've got plenty of wheat. That will be negative. Plain and simple, the wheat market, Michelle, pretty much prices itself off of where the Russia wheat is. If the Russia wheat prices firm up, we firm up. They weaken, we weaken. The one thing we got to be concerned about corn is we can't get rid of this wheat for some reason. It's going to compete for feed grain, unfortunately.
Yeah, but wheat prices, we're so close to new contract lows here. It feels like we should be pretty competitive in this market, and exports have been pretty decent, Jim.
We should. Also, the dollar is weakening. Like I said, it's going to get interesting, Michelle. The hard part about this is you mentioned exports. If this government goes into a full-blown shutdown, which is anticipated, we won't get the weekly export sales. We won't get the inspections. We probably won't get the flash sales. We won't get the October WASD. So this is going to get very challenging for the trade. We are really going to be flying blind over the next couple of weeks until this government shutdown ends. And that could have a little bit of negative reaction. As the old saying goes, you like to keep a bull market fed. If we're not getting bullish information, not getting sales, that could be price negative.
Yeah, that certainly could hold the market captive, but it really depends on how long the government stays shut down, right?
Exactly. I mean, some of these shutdowns have lasted a couple of days. I think the one of the first Trump go around was over 30 days. So, it can last a while. And like I said, hopefully it gets done soon, because there is some knowledge that we need to know where this crop is, because that will have an impact on decisions that producers need to make. It'll have decisions on basis. It'll have decisions on if farmer and buyers should jump in and buy the market or not.
Right. And we already have low water levels on the lower Mississippi. That's been impeding some of our export shipments as well. We don't need any more bad news on that front, do we, Jim?
No, we don't. Right now here in Northern Illinois, there's no rain in the forecast right now. I'd say the one thing, like for certain at this point, Michelle, is this harvest for beans is going to go fast. All our clients are running to get beans. I have a lot of people say they'll be done with beans in the next week to 10 days, and then they'll move on to corn.
Yeah, we're going to have a lot of hedge and harvest pressure here over the next several days, aren't we?
We should. I mean, remember, if we're not shipping beans to China, Michelle, roughly 600 million bushels that normally go out to China, they're not going out. They've got to find a new home, which means that we've got to have a logistics issue for beans. If you can't store beans, you're expected to sell beans onto the open market. You can't sell it because of the lack of China buying. It's going to force more corn to the market potentially in the latter half of fall, because storage is going to become I think it's going to become an issue, plain and simple, for most of the Midwest.
Yeah. And not a lot of new crop sales have been made by farmers, have they?
The best estimate I'm hearing is less than 15% of corn and beans both have been sold. That's it. So you're looking at 85% of this crop unpriced. Like I mentioned before, you're talking almost 1.5 billion more bushels of corn coming to harvest this year than a year ago. Storage is going to be a problem. Then you're going to get to a situation, where do elevators place it? Can they take it? Or are they going to force you to sell it?
And Jim, funds are actually record short in grains and oilseeds combined for this time of year. Is that going to be making this worse, or is that a situation where maybe we get a short covering rally at some point?
Well, eventually what's good, because they don't tend to hold these positions. But right now, I think it's a little bit negative. I mean, if you look at the corn position, they started, they'd lightened up quite a bit. They started building back in these short positions right now. So it's a combination, Michelle. The last couple of years, we felt this market do this kind of weird counter-seasonal rally through the fall. But, if you look back at that 10 and 15-year seasonal, the market tends to break all the way through the harvest. My fear is we could be seeing not the 5-year seasonal where you rally into the early part of, into the latter part of fall? Are we going to see weakness if these funds continue to add to their shorts due to the lack of information coming out of the government and essentially a pretty big crop to handle as well?
For sure. All right. A lot of good discussion there. Thanks so much, Jim McCormick with agmarket.net. That is Markets Now.
When you choose Brevant Seeds, you don't just win. You win so big, the very ground beneath your feet cries tears of joy. You win so big that second place feels like a participation trophy. You win so big, you might as well be harvesting buried treasure. Oh, sorry, just one more. When you choose Brevant Seeds, you don't just win. You hit the damn jackpot. Don't just win. Talk with your retailer or visit Brevant.com/jackpot to get started.